Welcome to the JETforce Operator Meetup. I'm Eric Vessels, not your normal host. I'm the CXO of Tactiful. Normally, we have our CEO, Kevin Abergel here. He is either on a plane or already over in Europe on a business trip, so I'm filling in with him. Happy to be here to help moderate and kick off. And our guest and host is Ken Huizinga, who is our operational consultant, our expert here, who's going to talk a little bit about foil tips and tricks this time around. So designers make these things beautiful, operators make it real, and Ken is certainly cut from that cloth of making it real and getting it done. He's going to lead a session today dedicated to operational tips and tricks around foil, focusing on consistency, setup, troubleshooting, and all the little details that separate smooth foil days from long foil nights. If foil has ever tested your patience, I think this is a session for you. Ken, welcome, and I'll let you go ahead and talk about all of the tips and tricks, which I know you have many specific to adding that foil glitter and shine to embellish print.
Thank you, Eric. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here again. I love talking about this subject. I think one of the important things for people to note is I did operate a jet varnish, but I also led the team as an operations manager. So I often had to deal with the customer, the CSMs, the CSRs, the pre-press and production. So by embracing the team and trying to understand the pain points that go around a shop, I think I bring some interesting insights. And although I'm going to talk a little bit about machine-specific items, I want to talk a little bit about the role of an operator has in the ecosystem of the machine, because you're going to get the files that customers are going to expect to look great, and sometimes you're going to see some designs that make you go, no, this can't possibly be. And in a lot of the forums and meetups that we have, we often get great tips from other operators. And let's talk a little bit about the beginning steps, right? You're going to get a file. And I would encourage you, if at all possible, especially with the way technology is today, to take that maybe a little ahead of time, take that printed sheet, put it through the machine, get the foil on it, and then pass it around a bit, talk to the customer service rep, talk to pre-press, say, hey guys, is this really what you wanted to see? Because at this point, it's really super easy to make changes. Because often what they'll do is they'll put too much foil down and forget that, hey, this is for an accent or this is for a specific part of the message. And they'll start putting it everywhere. And when you put it everywhere, it's not special anymore. There's nothing unique about it. It's just almost like another color. It's just that super shiny. So we often forget that less is more. And I think that as an operator, if you can take that to the people before you, let them send a picture to the customer, right? It makes you look like a hero. You're part of that system. And you could have prevented, $2,000 from being spent on something that looks absolutely god awful. So do that whenever possible, and go ahead and offer to proof too. A lot of times people are afraid to come back into production and go, I'm not going to bother them. I don't want to do that. Hey, these jobs are important. When you have this machine in your shop, you've already made yourself a better company and you are offering a better product. And I think it behooves you to have better practices when it comes to making sure it looks like the customer wants. Because if they're happy, they're going to show everybody and it's going to help your business. And you as the operator are going to be the guy that saves people from that.
So I think that's the big thing, Ken, right? Is like to take these functional jobs, quote unquote, out of the silos, right? I know our own Matt Redbear, who's functionally a designer, also knows a lot about the equipment, right? And yourself as an operator, you also know a lot about the design end. So the more you can cross-functional, both communicate and educate one another, the better you are overall as a shop, because your designer should understand sort of how the machine works. And they can learn that from the operator, and your operator needs to know how the design end works, and they can learn that from the designer and the pre-press folks, right?
Absolutely. It's really about, I think departments of a print shop tend to segregate themselves, and it tends to be an invisible wall. So when you get a jet varnish or you get a curio shine, you this changes things. It involves a lot of people and it involves a lot of dollars. So you as an operator can really make a difference to your company by sharing this communication. And there's other parts to that communication too, specifically when it comes to foil, right? Because now they're going to write up a job for a color of foil that you may not actually have in stock. So if you can get to where your estimators feel comfortable coming back and going, hey, Joe, do you have rose gold foil in stock? And if you do, how much? And if we have to order it, how long does it take? If you let it go ground, it can be 5 or 6 days. So getting to the point where that estimate has been approved and getting that foil ordered early can really save you. Last thing you want to do is have 6 days to produce a job, and you get it and find out there's no foil. You're FedExing in foil, which it's not light. It can be $100 just for FedEx to get it there the next day, maybe more if you're ordering more foil. So again, here's your opportunity as an operator to look great to the company and save everybody's butt. So um, keep a good inventory, know what your inventory is, keep it up to date. If you can even live, I used to have an Excel spreadsheet on the machine itself, and I would kind of keep an inventory. If I just ran 6 rolls of gold, I would deduct it from that inventory sheet. I would try and order it myself so that I continued to stay in inventory. But it's important that they know that something they were counting on Wednesday was used on Monday. So you're thinking, okay, foil, operator, how do I put it down? Again, we'll talk about that, but these are super huge issues that are important to the success of the print job. The other thing to do is to take a look at maybe what the design has that's going to be foiled. Usually you have these conversations with Prepress about not having type that's down at 7 and 8 point where you have a hole of an E or a hole of an O. You've got to remember you're putting down liquid and then you're going to put foil on top of it. If you start to spread into that O becomes a big period. So this is where it's really important to look at that file. You don't even have to print a sheet. You can open it up and go, oh, that serif tail on that particular font is not going to work. By the way, don't use those fonts when it comes to the jet varnish. Use blocky type fonts. Um, but so look at that thing, study it, go, okay, this is going to look great. This is going to look not so great. Diagonal key lines sometimes are things, and diagonal will look like it's jagged, right? Because you've got pixels and you're going to have that little step pattern that goes into a diagonal line. So let's take a look for that. Things that are too big. Like a lot of times people will put a 3 inch by 3 inch square of rose gold foil down. What is that doing for the job? It's adding color, yes, but it's not adding impact. There's going to be important parts to that message. And as an operator, you might want to point out, hey, that element is going to look like crap. And I don't know what they're trying to do here. I mean, if you're going to have an event, you want to talk about what the event's about, you want to have a date. These are the things you need to look at to make sure that people that grabs people's attention. It might be just the offer, but if it's off in a corner and it's not relevant to the message, it's really not the place to put foil. You can go ahead and varnish it if you want, but don't. I would encourage you to really focus on, hey, what's being offered here? What do they want people to do? What's the call to action? Let's work on elements there and then you'll learn as you operate the machine what's good and what's bad. But a lot of times it can just be a key line around a letter. It can be a key line around something that's varnished. You want to talk about impact? You varnish something with gloss, put a nice key line around it. Key line around type that's varnished is fantastic too, right? Again, you're probably only down to 2% of coverage, but these are the things that make it stand out and make you look good as an operator because the piece that you're going to produce is going to represent your skill level. So take a look at those items.
So that
We
takes
can,
having a really good relationship though, right? It seems like the relationship is so important so that if you have developed silos and you don't have that kind of relationship, becomes hard to have that communication, right? If you, as an operator, you're the last line of defense for what the output's going to look like. But if you don't have a good relationship with those folks in pre-press or those designers coming back and saying, hey, maybe we should change this because of the operational constraints, they might want to be like, well, just do your job and run the machine. But if you had that's why making sure that you've got that good relationship, I think, is important to be able to do what you're talking about.
It goes back to that old school culture, right? And I'll just tell you a little bit about my experience. Pre-press never really came back to the press room because the press room is, hey, this is expensive time. Let's get the press proofs out of here. Let's put them in the front office. Let's not bring customers back. Let's not slow down production. And then there ends up animosity. Where's my plates? This file's not right. I don't have enough trap. So in the past, there has been a lot of issues where you automatically stay away. The worst thing we ever wanted to have happen was when a salesperson would walk to the back of the shop and start picking things off the saddle binder to like, they just probably were curious about what the product looked like, but what an operator thinks is, oh, here you go. You're going to stand here and pick at the work that I'm doing. So
Right.
you got to get past that old school, let's stay out of each other's department, because this is such uh, well, I'm trying to think of the right word, where everybody really needs to come together to make these projects a success. And as an operator, you're key because you understand the technology, you understand the difficulty that comes to running a machine that prints, foils, and then goes through multiple passes. You're going to understand things that the owner's not going to get, that the pre-press is not going to get. And if you can, at a non-pressure type of moment, spend some time in those departments and say, hey man, I want to tell you a little bit about why this is difficult or what looks great. I think you're a key person in that relationship, and the more you keep the dialogue open, the better it's going to be for you. And turnaround time too, right? How about saying, this is a really long job. I got to do it 4 passes. You asked for it Friday. Can you please, please, please stay on the customer to get that proof and get it to me a day earlier than we would normally have it in the shop?
Right.
So it's all a part of the success, and I don't want the anybody that listens to this to think that the operator isn't really crucial in this scenario.
Yeah, and you're right.
Let's
It's culture, and that's top down. Like the ability for each department to talk to the other department and have the customer at the forefront of their mind and what they're producing at the forefront of their mind versus their quote unquote job and their little fiefdom that they've got. That's a cultural thing that's usually leadership based. But I mean, as an operator, I think you can sort of take the lead in that and start to be that consultative person in your shop to be able to take stuff back and just do it in a way that's not abrasive and it's I
And
think
this goes back to kind of the culture of foil to begin with, because the old school way of doing foil was you picked a color of foil, you committed to a dye. A dye could take 2 or 3 days to get. Your operator is focused only on stamping that foil. He doesn't really care about what's going to happen next. He doesn't have to worry about folding and scoring and bending and creasing and what's going to happen to the job when it's done. They just stamp their foil. And they used to get 7 days to go through a shop if it needed traditional foil. Well, now the salesman came in that sold the machine and said, oh, yeah, you could turn stuff around in 2 and 3 days. Okay, well, how about we take it down from 7 or 8 days to 3 or 4 days, not 1 or 2 days, right? And you might need to explain why that has to happen. And one of the things, especially with foil, you're putting down varnish and you're going to put foil on top of it, and you're going to end up with, you're going to think it's 100% cured. It is not. It is still a live animal. So you don't want to be taking things off of a jet varnish and putting them immediately into a folder or a creaser and bindery, because they're, even though it's cured, it's not really 100% cured. So again, another thing that you'll have to educate people to, that, hey, let's let this sit overnight and then tomorrow we'll start banging it out and getting it to the customers as fast as we can.
right on.
I did
Uh,
promise a little bit about the machine. I think that we talked a little bit about it. Go ahead and test run it, take a look at it, look for your problem elements, look for things that maybe they put foil on that don't show up when you get to the end. Sometimes the foil doesn't adhere to a small element, or it's an element that's down in pixels, and you've got a big one that's 100%, 100 microns next to it. Sometimes you can't pick that up. So these are some little subtleties. Take your proof out. If you don't have a proof, demand you get a proof. I don't know how many times we went, why does it look like this? Well, they didn't give me a proof. Demand a proof. Even if they got to take a highlight marker, go back to the file and pre-press and just highlight the elements that they intended to have foil, make sure they have foil. Um, when you think about laying down foil, you got temperature and pressure are your two biggies. But I encourage you to experiment when you're not running and see what foils can adhere at the lowest temperature. When I first started running the jet varnish 5, 6 years ago, we didn't run anything less than 140 degrees, and we would often start to melt the carrier, and we would have a lot of problems with wrinkling, and it would make the foil sheet actually a little bit weak. So any distortion in the path of the foil would cause wrinkles. Uh, Go ahead and test it at a lowest possible temperature. I know MGI, Konica, um, some of the other big foil manufacturers, which there's a lot of them, they're making foils now that could run at 100 degrees. And that is such an advantage when you're laying it down. It doesn't stress the foil. It allows it to stick better to the varnish, and it allows it to carry through the machine a whole lot better. Pressure is the other thing that can be the key to your success. If you're not checking pressure, if you're not dropping your foil roller with a piece of paper, and I recommend you do this, cut some strips of the paper, that substrate you're going to use, cut maybe 3 of them an inch wide. Go ahead and heat that roller up in your foil unit. It's important that it's heated up because when it heats, it's going to expand. And go ahead and manually drop that roller and see what your pressure is like. It's going to do a few things for you. If you haven't run a folder, you want to be able to drag that paper out slightly. You don't want to squeeze it to death so that you can't pull it out. If you do that and you get the slightest wrinkle in your foil as it enters, it's going to press that wrinkle right through your type, right through your blocks, right through your key lines, and it's going to look terrible. So pressure is huge. The other reason it's important to do 3, 1 in the middle and 2 on the ends, is sometimes you're going to run the middle of that roller really hard and heavy on smaller products, and you're going to beat the center of it down. So if you're doing that on a regular basis, you're checking that pressure, you're going to start to notice that that foil roller might be wearing out after 2 or 3 years, and your center has a much different pressure than your outside edges. And as an operator, there's nothing better than going to the owner and saying, "Hey, I know this is expensive, but at this point, we're not down. So could we get another foil roller on order and arrange to have that done when we're down?" Because uh, in the middle of a run, if your foil roller has gotten to that non-forgivable point, you are in big, big trouble. So it really, thinking about your machine and its environment, we could talk a lot about keeping it clean. You all should know that already. We've talked about it over and over again, but be meticulous on the inside of that print part of that machine. Make sure everything is clean. The rack around the heads is clean, because if you put that varnish down and it doesn't have any flaws, you're going to save a lot, right? Every pull of foil could be 18 inches, it could be 40 inches, depending on what machine you have. And that gets expensive when you start getting defects at the end. And don't trust the machine completely. You need to be focused on the end of it. So when something pops up, some piece of dust gets on a head, some particulate gets where it's not supposed to be. And sometimes it's not the print heads, it's the drying systems afterwards. The sheet can start popping because it's got tight edges, and then you're scraping your element, and then your foil picks up that element. So you really need to look at that. And one other big item, I had a little cheat that I used to do. I was okay to print fast, but I wanted to put foil down slow. If you think about the foil process, you're pressing it in, you want it to stick, and then you're going to carefully take up the waste, and it's going to go up to your take-up roll. Make sure that you slow the machine down. If you have a big enough gap on your feeder, you can get those sheets through the print engine quick. They'll slow down as they go through the foil unit because you can set that speed independently, and you can keep the run going that way. What this does, 2 things. It helps like with the foil and stopping it from wrinkling, but it also helps um, with the varnish, because you want to cure the varnish, but if you haven't messed with your drying units, use your pinning lamps to pin it in place. But your secondary lamps, maybe don't run those at 100% all the time. If you run those at 60 to 70%, sometimes it leaves the varnish a tiny bit tacky, and it really helps get that foil to adhere better, and it makes for a better looking product. So these are some quick little tips, and obviously at some point we can go into. I know we always tend to get to the beginning of the process, because I think if you can prevent your problems before you even have them, your life as an operator is going to be a whole lot smoother. But these are generally some things that you need to play with, and don't be afraid to play. Play with different pressures, play with different temperatures, play with different foils. I think that's one of the big keys, is try different brands of foil. If you call a rep from a foil company, I guarantee you, if you tell them what you're doing and what you're up to, they're going to offer you some samples of foil. And boy, there are a lot of foils. talk a little bit about that if we have time. But there's some patterns. There's some translucent foils now. There's some that just have patterns in them in the background that was slightly holographic. These products that they have can make a piece just bang. They look fantastic. So it's not just about conventional foils, it's about what the foil industry is doing to make things even look better than they have in the last 5 years. So ask about them. They might tell you we don't have that, or you got to order a minimum. But if you're really persistent and nice, next time that they're rolling that up at the mill, they'll slip you a 12-inch roll of some samples so you can take a look at it. But make sure it works. That's another key, a key for operators, right? Make sure you test it on some small stuff, some big stuff, some different elements, because the last thing you want to do is go into up to your designers or your CSMs and say, look at how awesome this looks. And they're all like, great, we're going to sell this product like mad. And then you're going to get it back on the machine. And you're going to find out that, oh man, I should have tried that a whole lot more than I did, because this stuff's not sticking. I'm not be able to pick up the small letters, and it's not doing well in bindery. So test thoroughly. That's a huge piece of advice.
So Ken, to have a bunch of different types of foil on hand is the only real consideration like storage and keeping it undamaged? There aren't any shelf life issues or whatever. It's just like
Well,
storage
that's a
space.
great question, Eric. It's absolutely crucial. After a year, if you have it in your shop a year with the environment, obviously you want to keep it cool and dark if you don't know that already. But sometimes on the weekends they shut the AC off and the stuff gets hot, and then the edges get tight and it gets wrinkly. I suggest, if at all possible, you build yourself a rack with dowel rods that you can actually place the rod to place it on horizontally. Because as soon as you turn those rolls up on end, you start damaging the bottom end. It sits on a counter, it gets moved 7 times. And now you're finding out when you put it in the machine and you start rolling that edge that you were setting it on is kind of getting all gnarly and rolled up. And it's really important that foil releases as it goes into the machine. If you got one corner that's always hanging up, you're constantly tweaking that roll as the foil as it goes into the machine. So keep it dark, keep careful control of your inventory. And after about a year, you need to be thinking about either getting that stuff out of there, offering a special on it, and they love to do that.
Yeah.
If you give it to your sales reps and tell them that they can have
Use it or lose it.
50% off.
Yeah, use it or lose it. So Ken,
So
let me ask you this. Let's say you haven't stored them horizontally, you've stored some of them vertically, and you do get an end that's damaged. Is that something you can cut clean and kind of make a shorter roll?
if you have a foil cutter, absolutely,
Okay.
you can cut it off, and hopefully it won't get it to a point where it's too small. But that also brings me to yet another point. If you do your own foil cutting, which I encourage you to do, oftentimes you can run skinnier foils depending on what machine you have. You can run them as little as 3 inches, and you can run multiple colors of foil on the same run on some of the MGI machines. Cut them, but when you order the foil that you're likely to cut, and by the way, if you order a full roll, which is 24, 25 inches, they'll put that out the door a whole lot faster than they will rolls that have to be cut. So get that, but request a medium wind on that foil. They like to wind that stuff tight. And when they wind it tight, there's no air in between the layers of foil. And when you go to cut that, you're going to build up a lot of heat and you're going to cause some defects on the side of the foil. So if you can ask the manufacturer if they can roll it up in a medium wind for you, it allows, it's a much softer. You'll feel it when the roll comes in and you squeeze it. It's got a little bit more air in there. And when you cut that, it allows heat to escape so that you get perfect ends to your foil. And so, I mean, that's a great question, Eric. Thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, no worries.
But that's about, that's the meeting that we promised. It would be short and concise and to the point. And I hope that this information helps. Again, I remind you of thejetforce.com. If you go there and you sign up, we have technical help there as well. I monitor that. Our Prepress guru, Matt Red Bear, monitors that. And if we miss it, Kevin will make sure that we get back to you. Okay, sometimes you're going to get to a point where you're waiting for somebody to call you from the manufacturer and they're spread thin and you're stuck. Don't get stuck. Go to that website. Let's talk about it. And if we can't get you an answer, sometimes we have a little pull with the manufacturers and we'll get you an answer a little bit quicker. But please, especially when it comes to foil, don't struggle. You shouldn't struggle. And if you are, let us help you and let us get you out of that jam. I don't want you waiting 4 hours for help. That puts so much pressure on an operator and make your mind blow.
Awesome. Ken, thanks so much. Lots of good tips and tricks. And as Ken said, we're always around the Tactful team as a resource 24/7 to ping us lots of different ways to reach us. And if one of us doesn't have the answer, there's someone on our team that does. And if there's no one on our team, we will go and find it for you. So thanks for watching and listening to this JETforce Operator Meetup. We appreciate you. Look for upcoming meetups that we have. We're going to be talking about some other issues related to operating the jet varnish and other MGI equipment. And we appreciate you paying attention, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks, Ken.
Later on.
See you guys.